Hey guys, in this video we're going to create a volume slider and we're going to learn SVG masking in React Native, and we're going to use React Native SVG for this, React Native Reanimated, React Native Gesture Handler, and Native Base. As you can see, the animation will be really smooth, so you can add this animation to any of your project. So let's start coding. First we'll be creating the SVG. So for the SVG, as you can see, based on our requirement in level 1, we'll only need this full volume component right here. So as you can see, this tab across, we have another element, increasing volume element, first, second, and third, and the speaker element. And we can just export it. You can of course export it using ID, and this is downloaded as you can see. And now we are in our VS Code, and I have imported this here. Now this is the initial setup of our project. We just have boxes with different colors, and of course there's an animated speaker in which only the volume slider text is present. So right now this is our only setup, and now we are going to add the uh, SVG in our animated speaker. So we'll be copying the whole SVG component from here, and we can just paste it right here. Now we'll be importing the React SVG and path and React from React Native SVG. Now, after saving, as you can see, the full volume component is visible in our emulator device. Now we can remove this box; it's not required at all. And now we can start with our project. First, we'll be adding the H stack, of course, because we'll need side by side two component, the full volume and the slider, right? So for the slider, we'll be using the box and we'll be giving it a color of this, and inside this box there'll be another box with color white. So based on our requirement, this is what we need. Now we can give it a width, say 100, 150, and some other styles. We'll be giving some other styles. The inner one will just keep it 20% of the width, and it will have the similar border radius and height. Now let's to work with the gesture handler, we need to wrap our component using the gesture handler root view, and we'll have to give the style flex equal to 1. For this to work, it needs to be provided to our whole component, and we'll be giving a gesture detector to our whole A stack so that we'll be able to detect our gestures, and we'll be able to slide our volume slider, and this will now we'll give it a gesture equal to gesture, and we'll need to create it, of course. So based on my earlier videos, you can see this same implementation somewhere else as well. So this is our the pan gesture handler, and we'll be using several like on begin, and we'll be using these functions on begin, on update, and then on end, and at the last will be on finalize. So we'll be using this to handle our gestures. Now we'll be creating the shared values. This is inner bar width, and this will be our start width. So this is very important, as I discussed in other videos as well. We'll need to remember what our previous gesture value was. So suppose our previous we have only moved it till 10 or 20%, then we'll need to remember it. So we'll save it in start width, and the next time we'll start the pen gesture, we will add this value to our initial value so that we don't start at 0 every time. And this is volume bar pressed, and it will have a initial value of false. And now let's start the implementation. Let's start with on begin. We'll make the value true for volume bar pressed. For on update, it will take the event and will update the inner bar with dot value equal to e dot translation x plus our initial value start with dot value. So this is very important to do. On end, what we'll do is we'll update the start with dot value to our inner bar width dot value so that we can remember it. And of course, to be on the safe side, we will just clamp the left and right side. If so, inner bar width dot value is less than 0. If it's say less than 0, then we'll need to keep it 0 only so that we don't go more left. And else if inner bar width dot value is greater than or equal to 140, then of course again we want to keep it to 140 so that we don't go more than our maximum value. So on finalize, we'll be able to we will make the volume bar press dot value as false. Now we need to convert this box to animated box, and for that we'll be using uh, React Native Reanimated uh, animated component. So animated dot create react create animated component box. So using this, we'll be able to create an animated component animated box. And then we have already added this. Now we just need to add the props for this. So rather than doing the static width of 20%, we'll be adding animated props, and it will take say bar props. So we'll need to create this bar props. Now this bar prop will be is equal to, so now we'll be using use animated props for this, and this will return an object, and that object will have width. And of course, we'll need to interpolate the width based on the inner bar width. So inner bar width dot value, and then there will be input values, the array of input values. I'll give 0 to 150 since that was our final value. So input value will be 0 to 150. Output value will keep as 0 to 100. So that will be in percentage 0 to 100, and then the configuration object that will keep the extrapolation values. So extrapolate left will be say extrapolation dot clamp. Yes. So and the next will be extrapolate right. So this is very important to close our animation at the minimum and maximum range so that we don't go further than that. Now as you can see, the animation is working. Let's reload the app once so that everything is set and we know everything is working now. Okay, I did a fault and didn't convert our value to width value to percentage, so we need to convert it from number to percentage. Now and now it should work all right. So just to be on the safe side, we'll give it another reload, and now it should work perfectly. Okay, we have added everything here as required, the animated props, bar props, and now this should work. Yes, it works perfectly. But we don't see the cross mark to be going, right? So when the volume bar width becomes 0, the crossbar should be coming on, and when we go more than 0, this should be invisible. So for that, um, so we'll need to send the inner bar width to the animated speaker, and we'll change the color to white, of course. And then first, we need to create a animated React component, and we'll be again using React Native Reanimated create animated component to create a animated React of the React element of SVG, React Native SVG. Okay, so I've created that, and now based on this, we'll be animating this animated React To achieve it, we'll be able to achieve the animation we require using the width and height. So now we need to create a prop using animated props, so that we'll be able to add it here. So this will be animated cross props, and will again return an object which will have the height, and we'll be transferring the inner bar width dot value. If it's less than 0, then we'll do 34, otherwise 0, and we'll be giving it a duration of half second. Similarly for width also, we will check if inner bar width dot value is less than or equal to 0, then we'll do a width timing, and we'll send it to say 4. And if it's with the duration of 10 millisecond, then otherwise if its inner bar width is greater than 0, then we will do this with delay 490 millisecond, and with timing we'll send this value to 0 with a duration of 10. So this is the optimal configuration that I got after much changes, and it works perfectly now, as you can see. So this is all in level 1. Now we'll go to level 2 of our project. First, we'll remove these comments that we don't require anymore. Now, in level 2, what we'll do is we will animate those 3 little volume increasing elements, first, second, and third. So to do that, we'll need to create an animated path. And for that, first we will create an array of paths. So it will be paths equal to array of paths, and we will extract all the paths, first, second, and third, all the 3 paths, and we'll add it here in the string. So this will be our first path. So our first path, the other one is the speaker. This is our first path. We'll be adding that, and similarly we'll be adding the second and third as well. Okay, so all the 3 paths have been added there in the paths array. Now we'll be using the map function to map through the paths value. And we'll now be using the animated SVG, and of course we'll send the color, the key, we need it, and d or path. Let's set it to path equal to path, and then give me one this, and inside this we'll be getting the path, and this will be path as well, d equal to path, and this should work now. Yeah, this is working. Is now we'll be able to send this inner bar width, and based on this inner bar width value, we'll be animating our first, second, and third elements of our SVG. Now we'll be getting this inner bar width, and based on this inner bar width, we'll do some calculations. For that, we'll need the index as well. So we got the index, and now we'll start our animation. First, we will create a animated prop, animated SVG prop, say animated SVG prop, and we'll use the use animated props hook of React Native Reanimated, and of course it again gives a object that will return an object of. For this we'll need just the opacity. So we'll be using the opacity property of SVG path, and we'll be animating it with a duration of say 500 milliseconds or half second. So for that we'll need to do some calculations first. Let's start a value. let value equal to 0. Now we'll be using the if condition to check if the index is equal to 0. Then we will set the value to 1. Of course, we'll need some other condition as well, and that condition will be inner bar width. If the inner bar width greater than 0, then only we'll set the value to 1. Next, else if index is equal to 1 and inner bar width, no, not inner bar width, this will be volume percentage, not inner bar width. So we'll create volume percentage using is derived value of React Native Reanimated, and this also return we can return anything here. So we'll be returning an interpolated value by using the inner bar width, and similarly as we did before, we'll be using the input values, output values, and the extrapolation configuration. Now we'll be able to use this volume percentage that will range from 0 to 100%. So to get exact value for our implementation. So we'll use this volume percentage here, volume percentage dot value, and here also volume percentage dot value, and this should be equal to 1. And similarly here also we'll we'll change it based on if it's 0, more than 0, more than 30%, or more than 70%. Now we'll be adding this animated prop. Of course, we need to create the animated path first using the create animated component of React Native Reanimated. And this will be animated props equal to, say, any SVG, animated SVG prop. Okay, and this should work now. It's for some reason it's really slow, and we're not getting the third element of our volume speaker. Yeah, this should be 2, not 3. And also the speed, yeah, the duration should be reduced to 500 millisecond rather than 5000, and this works perfectly now. As you can see, 30% and then 70% and then 100%. So this works perfectly now, and this all will get in level 2. We can just clear this up a little bit. Now rather than sending inner bar width, we can send just the volume percentage, and it will work just as good. Here also we can just change all the implementations using inner bar width and change it to volume percentage. For that, we can just use the change all the occurrences from here and just change everything at the same time. Volume percentage is set everywhere, and this will work perfectly for our implementation. Here also we don't need this inner bar width, and we can note this volume percentage as well since we're getting it from the props already. And it goes from 0% to 30% to 70% and 100%. Yeah, it's perfect. Next, we'll start with level 3. For this will be our initial component. This will be our initial SVG. And then from this, we'll go to the final SVG. So what will happen is that on volume bar pressed will increase the width and height of the outer bar and inner bar, and then the volume speaker will be inside this outer and inner bar. Now, after masking, we'll be able to see this volume speaker like this. So this is our output SVG, and this will be our input SVG. Just to be sure that everything is perfect here, right before we export it. So this is correct, and then this is at the center as well. Okay, we can just export it now. So we just check this include ID attribute and then we can export this. Now we can start creating our project. So this is our volume slider init component, and we can just clean it up a little bit. We don't need the G's, the groupings here. Don't need the groups here. And this is our component, and we'll be copying this props from this SVG and path and brat and add it in our project. The SVG for paths 1, 2, 3, and then the cross component as well. We'll be adding all these props from this cross ID rectangle and add it here. As you can see, our SVG is here, but we didn't import the two rectangles till now, the outer bar and inner bar. So now we'll import them as well and change them to React React Native SVG. Now we can remove this A stack and box. We don't require this because we'll be using the React from React Native SVG only to do the same animation. Okay. So as you can see, this is working, but the bar is not moving because we haven't added any animation here. As you can see, this is 240, but we'll not create the full width. We'll just add 220 at the maximum width for our animated bar. Okay. So that we have spacing of 10 in the left and right side. Let's convert this rect component to animated rect component so that we can do the animation. Now, we'll change this initial values of the maximum values of this to 140 because we have created the SVG like that. So outer bar, inner bar maximum value will be 140. And now we'll set our project as required. We don't need it here. We can just put it inside the animated speaker. because it is not required in that file. You can just send this inner bar width. And I didn't import the useData value again. Of course, we need to import interpolate and maybe extrapolation as well. Yeah. So extrapolation I've imported it as well. Now this should work as it is. Yeah. There's no changes. Now let's create the animation for this. For that, we'll be using use derived value again to get the outer bar width based on our volume bar press dot value. For that, we'll be using the volume bar press dot value, and will be based on our volume bar press dot value. If it's true, then we'll be sending 220. Otherwise, 140 will be setting the it to 140 of our outer bar. Okay. So next will be our inner bar width. Okay. So volume inner bar width will be used derived value, and we'll be using it based on the volume percentage. We'll be making it volume percentage into volume, outer bar width by 100. So this is based on the calculation that if the value is say 20 of volume percentage, then we want only 20% of the outer bar width. The inner bar width to be 20% of the outer bar width. Okay, so this will be 20% of outer bar width if it's 20%. Now we'll be creating the inner bar props using the animated props, and we'll be sending the width. This returns an object, and we'll be sending the width. We'll be setting the width. Next is the height. That will be based on the volume bar pressed value. So if it's pressed, then with string 40, with the string config that we have already defined and configured it based on our requirements. Next, we'll be creating Rx and then X and Y as well. So this should be 5 props that we'll be sending. If Rx is volume bar pressed, then 12, otherwise 4. X will be, let's check, X will be 78 when the volume bar is not pressed. When it's pressed, it should be 10. And when it's pressed, it should go to 10 value. For Y, we want the value to be 16 when it's not pressed. Maybe that's initial value, and when it's pressed, we can go to 0. So we'll be changing the Y value to 0 when it's pressed, and when it's not pressed, it will be 16. And now, based on this inner bar props only, we can create the outer bar props. It will have the similar props only. Just we'll need to update the width, outer bar props, and the width will be updated to outer bar width. Okay, so now we'll be able to add this inner bar props and outer bar props to our outer bar or inner bar of SVG so that they can animate based on these props. We'll be commenting this and adding the animated props property, which will take this one will take outer bar props, and this lower one, which is inner bar, it will take animated props equal to inner bar props. Now, just to be on the safe side, we'll give it a reload. And let's see if it's working. Yeah, it is working, but the volume speaker gets hidden at the bottom. So for that, we'll use the masking. Now comes the real interesting part. So we'll do the masking, and based on this mask, our color of our volume speaker will change. Okay, this will be really interesting. So let's start. First, we'll remove these comments that we won't require anymore. Now we'll go here, and before starting with that, we'll be creating our mask using the mask element of SVG, or mask element of React Native SVG, and we'll give it an ID of same mask. You can give it anything, same mask or whatever name you want. So inside this mask, we want these three things. So basically five things. So the speaker, the cross, this, let's name it ID equal to cross, the speaker, the cross, and the three volume increasing elements. So all these five elements should be inside this mask, because we want to see them in different color whenever we move the mask. Okay. So we'll be saving it inside the mask, copy and paste inside the mask, and yeah, all the five elements are inside the mask. Now we need to do some setup. So based on the uh, setup, we will be able to see our component, right? So however the stack works, so on the element that will be at the top in a stack, that will be visible to the eyes, right? So we have to set our SVG in a way so that the SVG draws the part which gets on the bottom first, right? So the first element will be drawn first. So we'll move the first element to be the outer bar. The mask can be anywhere, but the outer bar would be at the bottom of our SVG. So we'll just paste it here. After our outer bar, we want our inner bar to be present. On top of that will be our full volume component, so that it's completely visible to us. Okay. So after outer bar, we'll be adding the inner bar. After that will be our complete all five elements of our SVG that will be visible to our eyes. Just to make sure that it is correct, we'll first comment this, and as you can see, it's not visible, but it should be visible. So I'll just change the color to show you that now it will be visible. I'll change the color of these three elements to say red. Yeah, and now they should be visible on top of our mask, on top of our rectangle. So now just to revert the color back to color, and we will add our masking component. So this will be really interesting. This is really simple, but you need some time to figure out the configuration that works with your animation best. Okay, so yeah, we'll remove this comment, and at first we'll just make the inner bar as mask. After that, we'll do the other outer bar as mask as well. First, it will have a mask property, and we'll give it URL with ID of the mask. Okay, because we created the mask with ID mask. Okay, and we'll change the color to 1C, 1C, 1C. Now you'll be able to see the mask really easily. Okay, this is done. Okay, now it will look really cool. Okay, as you can see, we start our animation, the mask is on, and the same volume component becomes black when the mask is on top of it, and when the mask is not on top of it, it becomes white again. See, it's really cool. All the animations are working fine, just we have added a mask on top of it. Now we'll be adding another mask that will be the outer bar, and we'll change the color to say yellow, just to show you how it looks. And for mask, we will be adding the same mask to this one as well. And then if we move this, as you can see, the outer bar is also a mask right now. For me, I'll change this color to this one. And as you can see, this is a lighter white color. So it's kind of like a silver color and it looks really nice, right? So this is it. You can add this animation to any of your project and it will look really cool. SVG masking is really nice and awesome. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe and like and comment so that more people can see this video. Thank you.